The snow fell like broken promises outside the diner window, each flake a reminder of how quickly life could turn cold. Maya pressed her face against the frost-etched glass, watching the last of the evening commuters hurry past with their heads down, their breath forming small clouds of warmth that vanished as quickly as her own hopes had 3 months ago. Her stomach cramped with familiar hunger, and she clutched the crumpled $5 bill in her pocket as her last connection to a world where she once had keys to her own front door. "You can't stay here all night, honey," the waitress said gently, refilling Maya's water glass for the 4th time. The woman's name tag read Dolores, and her eyes held the kind of weariness that comes from seeing too many stories like Maya's unfold in red vinyl booths. Maya nodded, knowing the drill. She'd been living it for weeks now and nursing a single cup of coffee for hours, moving from one 24-hour establishment to another, sleeping in her car when she could afford the gas, and in doorways when she couldn't. The social work degree on her wall meant nothing now that the non-profit she'd worked for had closed, taking her salary, her apartment deposit, and her dignity with it. "I understand," Maya whispered, gathering her worn backpack and the thin jacket that had seen better seasons. As she stood to leave, a voice called out from the corner booth, "Excuse me, miss?" Maya turned to see a man in his early 30s, with calloused hands wrapped around a coffee mug and eyes that seemed to actually see her and not through her, not past her, but her. His flannel shirt was clean but faded, and his work boots bore the honest scuffs of someone who earned his living with his hands. "I'm sorry if this sounds forward," he continued, his voice carrying a slight southern drawl that spoke of magnolia trees and front porch swings, "but I couldn't help overhearing. I'm Jake, and I've got a spare room if you need somewhere safe to sleep tonight. No strings. No expectations, just a bed and a locked door." Maya's first instinct was to run. Strange man offering shelter to desperate women. She'd heard those stories, lived through enough of them secondhand in her social work days to know how they usually ended. But something in his face, in the way he kept his distance and spoke to her like she was still human, still worthy of basic respect, made her pause. "I don't accept charity," she said, the words coming out sharper than intended. Jake nodded slowly. "Good for you. I respect that. Tell you what, my truck needs a deep clean, and I've got a small construction business that could use someone to organize the paperwork that's been piling up for months. You help me out with that stuff, and we'll call it even. Fair trade." The diner fell quiet except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the soft clatter of dishes being cleared. Maya studied his face, searching for the catch, the hidden agenda, the predatory gleam she'd learned to recognize. Instead, she found only patience and something that looked suspiciously like genuine kindness. "One night," she said finally, "and I sleep with my backpack." "Of course," Jake replied, leaving a generous tip on the table. "My truck's the blue Ford out front. I'll follow you if you're driving, or you can ride with me if you'd prefer." The drive to Jake's house took them through a modest neighborhood where Christmas lights twinkled in windows and children's bicycles lay scattered in front yards. His home was a small craftsman-style house with a covered porch and flower boxes that showed signs of careful tending, even in winter. "It's not much," Jake said as he unlocked the front door, "but it's warm and safe." Inside, the house was simple but clean, with furniture that looked comfortable rather than expensive. Maya noticed the military medals displayed quietly on a bookshelf, the stack of library books about small business management, and the framed photo of an older couple who shared Jake's gentle eyes. "My parents," he explained when he caught her looking. "Dad taught me that a man's character is measured by how he treats people when nobody's watching. Mom taught me that everyone deserves dignity, especially when they're down." He showed her to a small bedroom with a single bed covered in a handmade quilt, a dresser with a small lamp, and most importantly a door with a lock that worked from the inside. "Bathrooms across the hall," Jake said. "There's soap and clean towels. Kitchen's open if you get hungry. I usually keep sandwich stuff around. I'll be up early for work, but you're welcome to sleep as long as you need." That night, Maya lay in the narrow bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for the other shoe to drop. She'd positioned her backpack by the door and kept her clothes on, ready to run if necessary. But as the hours passed her and Jake's footsteps never approached her door, something inside her chest began to unknot for the first time in months. She woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Sunlight streamed through unfamiliar curtains, and for a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it came back to the diner, the stranger's kindness, the first full night's sleep she'd had in weeks. In the kitchen, Jake was packing a lunch into a cooler. He looked up when she appeared, his face brightening with a smile that seemed to come naturally. "Morning. Hope I didn't wake you. Coffee's fresh if you want some." "You didn't have to cook," Maya said, accepting the mug he offered. "My pleasure. I like cooking for people. He reminds me of Sunday mornings at home growing up." He gestured toward the table where he'd left a plate of eggs and bacon still warm. "I've got to head to a job site, but that paperwork I mentioned is in the office here. It's just the extra bedroom I converted. Computer's old but it works, and there's no rush on anything." After he left, Maya found herself genuinely curious about the mess of invoices, receipts, and contracts scattered across the desk. Her organizational instincts kicked in, and she spent the morning creating a filing system and entering data into a simple spreadsheet. It felt good to be useful again, to remember that she had skills and value beyond her current circumstances. When Jake returned that evening, dirt-stained and tired, his face lit up at the neat stacks of papers and the organized computer files she'd created. "This is incredible," he said, scrolling through the financial summary she'd prepared. "You've done more in one day than I managed in 6 months. How much do I owe you?" "You don't owe me anything," Maya replied. "You gave me shelter. I gave you organization. We're even." But Jake shook his head. "This is professional level work. I insist on paying you fairly." That evening, over a dinner of homemade chili and cornbread that Jake had learned to make from his grandmother, Maya found herself talking about her old job, her dreams of making a difference, and the crushing weight of failure that had led her to that diner booth. Jake listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own story of starting his business after leaving the army, of struggling to make ends meet, of understanding what it felt like to have everything fall apart. "You know," he said as they cleared the dishes together, "my business is growing faster than I expected. I could really use someone to handle the administrative side full-time. The pay isn't spectacular, but it's steady work, Aunt." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "And if you needed to stay here while you get back on your feet, the spare room isn't going anywhere." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. "Jake, you don't even know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you're honest. You could have walked out with my computer today and I wouldn't have been able to stop you. I know you're hardworking. You turned my disaster of an office into something functional in a few hours. And I know you're proud and independent, which tells me you won't take advantage of kindness." 3 months later, Maya stood in the same bedroom, but now the dresser held her clothes. The walls displayed her social work degree alongside a new certificate in small business management, and the bedside table held a photo of her and Jake at the company Christmas party, where she'd been introduced as his business partner. The transition from guest to roommate to something more had been gradual and natural, built on shared meals and late-night conversations about dreams and fears, on Jake's patient understanding of her need for independence and Maya's growing recognition of his genuine goodness. He'd never pushed, never presumed, never made her feel like she owed him anything more than what she freely chose to give. "You know what the funny thing is?" Maya said one evening as they sat on the front porch watching the neighborhood kids play in the yard across the street. "I came looking for just a place to sleep, and somehow I found a whole life." Jake reached for her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. "Sometimes the best things find us when we're not looking for them," he said. "My dad used to say that kindness is like planting seeds. You never know which ones will grow into something beautiful." As the stars appeared overhead and the porch light cast a warm glow around them, Maya realized that she'd discovered something she'd never expected to find in her darkest moment. That home isn't just a place with 4 walls and a roof, but wherever you're seen, valued, and loved for exactly who you are. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it comes from the kindness of a stranger who asks for nothing in return except the chance to be human together. In Jake's simple offer of shelter, she'd found not just safety, but partnership. Not just a bed, but a foundation for rebuilding everything she thought she'd lost. The hunger that had driven her to that diner had been about more than food. It was a hunger for dignity, for purpose, for connection. And in his arms, in their shared life, she'd found all of that and more. The snow began to fall again outside their window, but this time Maya watched it without fear, knowing that whatever storms might come, she would face them from the warmth of a place where she truly belonged.